Hello everyone, I'm Zachary O'Shea, this is Box of Teeth, and every October for the last few years I put out a homebrewed monster per day for Dungeons & Dragons that has a fun horror themed feel. So here is your October monster a day for October 10th, 2023. This second week, what we're doing is we're going over legendary versions of previous Waning Court monsters that I have published. Again, very quickly, the Waning Court is a homebrew group of Dark Fae that I use for a horror-based Dungeons & Dragons campaign. They're nightmarish in feel, they have an autumn sort of tinge to them, and they cover a bunch of different horror genres, really just folk, body horror, and cosmic horror in that sort of vein. The reason for this is twofold. Why I'm doing it this way is one, I get to show you two monsters every day, which is pretty neat, and two, to help fledgling dungeon masters think about how to build legendary versions of creatures that already exist by giving it a name and a slightly different personality, a few extra tricks in its bag that really will be memorable to their players. Today we're going to go over the Latchkey, which is a small type of Fae that works for the Waning Court, and the Manfred Moppet, which is a bit more sinister version of a Latchkey. Let's get started with the Latchkey. Now, these pint-sized Fae imitate human children. Their heads are covered with straw-colored hair that hides their pointed ears. Their nails are hooked and red. Their nose is a bit too sharp. Their mouth is a bit too small, at least until they giggle. Whenever they do laugh, that smile goes from ear to ear and it's full of wide, square teeth. And that laugh, that giggle, sounds kind of like a child's giggle and kind of like a door chime. They wear a smock that's patched with bright colored swatches and tall boots with kind of that elfin toe curve to them. Now, among the Waning Court, the Latchkeys are thieves in the night. While they are mischievous and they like scaring mortals half to death, the Waning nobles really deploy them for a couple of different reasons on the mortal plane. Sometimes they're sent to scout out a point or person of interest so that Waning nobles' other retainers know what they're getting into ahead of time. Most of the time, though, they are sent to either pilfer a specific item or children, depending on what the greater Fae desires. The Latchkeys are quite adept at breaking and entering, and their abilities help distract any guards or parents they might encounter. They are always paid in sweets. Okay, let's take a look at a Latchkey for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition very quickly. Now, here you can see that they are a challenge rating 3. They are a small Fae. They're neutral evil as opposed to the usual lawful evil of the Waning Court because they like to be paid in sweets and they have a lot of avarice to them. They do have Curdle the Blood, so they do additional damage to frightened creatures. They can cast Minor Illusion to distract people. They have Magic Resistance. They have Rattle the Knob, which is one of their two big abilities. If they touch an item like a window, door, or chest, and it has an unlock DC of 15 or less, it automatically disarms any traps and unlocks the door. So that's how they get into the house. They can also bite with their big white teeth and slash with their claws. The other big ability they have is Sinister Laughter. This is when they giggle. Nobody wants to hear a giggling child in the middle of the night, especially if you don't actually have a child in your house, as it were. So when folks hear this, they have to make a wisdom save or they are frightened, which again ties back into the Curdle the Blood. There you go. It's a little tiny, terrible tot to frighten both NPCs and player characters with as needed. Now let's take a look at the Manfred Moppet and see how he is definitely different. And really, as I hinted, he's a lot more sinister. He's kind of a shadowy sadist. Unlike other Latchkeys, the Manfred Moppet doesn't sneak into houses to steal objects or children. He does so to torture the occupants and sate his bloodlust. The Moppet not only can unlock doors and windows with a knock, but he can also close and lock them with just a gesture, getting the poor victims stuck in one spot. Worse yet, smothering darkness is his primary weapon, and his pure white eyes pierce it as easily as his claws do a mortal's abdomen. He likes nothing more than chasing a mortal into a corner room, enrobing them in gloom, waking up the rest of the house as he tortures them and they scream, and then tossing their disembodied parts at their loved ones who come to investigate. Pretty nasty fellow, that's for sure. Let's go over the Manfred Moppet's statistics for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition really quickly. As you can see right off the bat, he is a challenge rating 5, which is definitely tougher than normal Latchkey at challenge rating 3, but he shares many of the same abilities. He has Curdle the Blood, innate spellcasting of Minor Illusion, Magic Resistance, Rattle the Knob, He has multi-attack with bite, claws, and sinister laughter. Where he has difference is unnatural sight, so we can see in magical darkness, and he has warden, which is the opposite of rattle the knob. With a jester within 30 feet, he can close doors and windows and that sort of stuff and lock them. Now let's take a look at his legendary abilities, which is where he gets really gross. He has claw, which he makes a claw attack, shut in, where he uses the warden ability, and shh, where he casts darkness centered on himself. You will notice this is not an innate spellcasting ability that he has, and the reason for this is while it is relatively nasty to have as a legendary action, it only lasts until the end of its next turn. So it gets around where everything is dark and everything is scary, but it doesn't last terribly long, unless it keeps using that legendary action over and over and over to do so, which kind of lessens its effectiveness as a legendary monster. Well, obviously the Moppet was around for a moment there as I was going over his statistics, as it was darker in here, but he's left because it's lighter again. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed these monsters. I've used them before. They're nice and terrifying, and players hate them in a good way because of the spookiness that they give. Nobody, again, likes to hear a giggling child at 3 a.m. in the morning when there shouldn't be a child there. Now, of course, every one of my monsters you can go and see, as well as hundreds of other horror-themed monsters for Dungeons & Dragons, all perfectly free at boxofteeth.blogspot.com. If you're interested in the horror role-playing game projects that I have that are not Dungeons & Dragons, or the horror writing that I do, which includes grease paint right there, it has a killer clown, I think you'd enjoy it, you can always go to www.zacharyoshay.com. I really do appreciate your time and your attention today, and I will talk to you again tomorrow. Take care.